I still remember that moment like a knife carved into my memory. After 6 months of grueling work in London, I returned to New York with the excitement of a kid about to open Christmas presents. I pictured unlocking my familiar Manhattan apartment, sinking into my light gray sofa, basking in the golden glow of light streaming through the window, and breathing in the lingering scent of cinnamon candles on the shelf. But the moment I opened the door, I was swept into a nightmare no one could have predicted. A cacophony hit me. Upbeat pop music, loud laughter, children's cries mixed with the clinking of glasses. My apartment was filled with pink balloons, ribbons, paper flowers, and stacks of gift boxes piled high. A stranger pressed a salted egg into my hand as if I were an uninvited guest. I stood frozen, suitcase still in hand, my heart plummeting to the pit of my stomach. Then I saw my sister, Sarah, lounging on my white sofa, barefoot, her 7-month pregnant belly prominent under a floral maxi dress. Her friends cheered, snapped photos, and handed her gifts, as if my apartment were her personal palace. Sarah looked up, saw me, and flashed a smile. "Oh, Emily, you're back? I thought you'd moved out for good." A shallow, careless laugh, as if my presence was just a minor mix-up. My face burned, but my mouth locked shut, unable to form words. I scanned the room. My neatly arranged bookshelves were gone, replaced by glossy cellophane-wrapped gift baskets. The cactus I'd nurtured for years was shriveled, shoved into a corner. The porcelain dish set I'd bought with my first paycheck was being passed around like a party tray. Every trace of me had vanished, overtaken by the celebration of someone else's sacred role, Sarah's impending motherhood. As I stood reeling in horror, my mother, Linda, approached. Dressed elegantly in a navy dress, her high heels clicking on the hardwood floor I'd once polished to a shine, she offered no greeting, no hug after 6 months apart. She simply draped her coat over my arm and whispered, "Don't ruin your sister's special day. Go help out." A forced smile played on her lips, the familiar one she used when doing something cruel while expecting my silence. I heard something shatter in my chest. Not glass, but my self-respect cracking wide open. I wordlessly hung her coat on the rack and retreated. Not one person in the crowd glanced back at me. No one asked, "How was London? Are you tired?" Just more cheers as Sarah unwrapped another gift. I headed to what was once my bedroom. The door was ajar, and when I pushed it open, I nearly collapsed. My familiar room was now a storage space for diapers, baby bottles, and cartons stuffed with newborn supplies. My bed was stripped bare, my wardrobe filled with boxes labeled newborn essentials. On my desk, instead of the framed photo I cherished, sat a bag of unopened baby toys. I stepped inside, closed the door, and sank onto the bare mattress. Just a few dozen steps away, my family was joyously celebrating a new life. Meanwhile, in the darkness, I was buried like an invisible ghost. I wanted to scream, to sob, but my throat was dry, my eyes empty. The silent death of my place in the family hurt more than any argument ever could. I sat there, listening to the clinking glasses, the shrill laughter, my mother proudly boasting about her eldest daughter. "Sarah's my pride and joy. As for Emily," I imagined the sentence trailing off, because for years, I'd been the capable but unimportant shadow. Maybe part of the blame was mine. From childhood, I was taught to be strong, to endure, to yield. My successes were taken for granted, while Sarah's mistakes were excused as no big deal. I thought that as an adult, standing on my own in New York, I'd escape that cycle. But now, in the apartment I'd poured my sweat into paying for, I was still just a side character in a tragedy called family. Time crawled. I sat motionless for hours as the music blared and laughter echoed outside. Finally, I heard the door slam, footsteps fading, the apartment falling silent. But it wasn't the comforting silence of a home after a long day. It was a silence reeking of stale wine, spoiled cake, and overpowering baby lotion. My space had been invaded, then abandoned like a littered battlefield. I curled up on the bed, pulling the blanket over me, my heart heavy as stone. I whispered into the darkness, "Who am I in this family? A stranger? a shadow, or just a placeholder for someone else to step into? It wasn't a fleeting question anymore. It was a deep crack, signaling that from this moment, I could no longer be the good daughter in Mom's eyes or the dutiful sister to Sarah. If you're reading this, you've probably felt that same sting of being forgotten in your own home, pushed aside because someone else needed priority. I'm sharing this not just to vent my pain, but to ask, have you ever felt erased from your own life? Tell me how you face that injustice. Leave a comment, share your story. Maybe your experience will help me and others find the courage to keep going. I woke the next morning to the stifling smell of old wine and baby lotion lingering on the rug. The apartment was quiet, but the silence wasn't soothing. It was the hollow aftermath of a storm, chaotic, messy, empty. I stepped out of my room, barefoot on the cold hardwood, and instantly felt something had changed forever. I walked through the apartment. Each step cut into my memories. The bookshelf, where I'd carefully arranged books by cover color, was now bare except for a few congratulatory cards. My books were gone without a trace. I opened my desk drawer. Empty. The manuscripts, the notebooks filled with design ideas, were missing. My heart pounded as I pulled my old suitcase from under the bed. Instead of the diaries I'd kept since high school, I found only stacks of diaper bags. I rummaged through the kitchen trash. At the bottom, amid the sour stench of wine, was my crumpled diary, tucked with a yellow note scrawled, "Shred." My mother's handwriting. In that moment, everything froze. I felt murdered in the quietest way. My memories, my words, a piece of my life, deemed garbage to be destroyed. Questions screamed in my head, why me? What did I do wrong? Or was it simply because I'm not Sarah? The pain choked my throat, but instead of crying, a fire rose within me. A bitter realization. They'd erased me from the family picture so naturally, as if I'd never existed. I stood in the living room, once my safe space, feeling like an exile in my own home. The paintings I'd hung were gone. The old piano Dad bought me at 16 was missing. In their place were folding chairs, gift boxes, and a welcome baby poster. I searched for any trace of myself but found none. I'd been wiped clean. Part of me wanted to scream at Mom and Sarah, "You had no right!" But a calmer, more pained part whispered, "Emily, if you don't stand up today, they'll always think you're just a bystander." I walked to the door, gripping the lock. I recalled a conversation with my landlord. As long as your name's on the lease, you're in charge. That thought sparked like a lifeline. If I didn't act now, I'd be swept out of my apartment. And my life. That night, I called a locksmith. The middle-aged man with rough hands worked quietly, asking no questions. The clank of metal echoed in the dim hallway, and when the door opened with a new key, I took a deep breath. It was the first sound in months that made me feel alive. I leaned against the door after he left. The apartment was still, streetlights casting long shadows on the floor. I sat on the ground, back against the cold wall, staring out the window at the city that never sleeps. Cars streamed below, neon lights flickered, Manhattan buzzed on, indifferent to the pain of a young woman erased from her family. But in that moment, my heart felt lighter. I whispered, like a vow to myself, no one gets to erase me anymore, never again. If you've read this far, I bet you've felt that suffocating sting, being dismissed, pushed out of your own life by those closest to you. I'm sharing my story not just to release pain, but to ask, have you ever had your mark deliberately erased by someone? If you find the story compelling and want to know what happens next, comment why. If it's not gripping enough, comment N. There's a moment in life when you know, if you don't act now, you'll lose everything. For me, it came hours after changing the locks. Sitting in the empty living room, New York's nightlights filtering through the curtains, my fingers trembled as I held my phone. I opened the family group chat, filled with years of blame and demands, and typed slowly, "This apartment is for me alone now. Please take your things and don't come back." I hit send, 1 second, 2, then my phone buzzed nonstop. Mom's message came first. "Emily, what are you talking about? Don't be selfish. Your sister's pregnant, she needs a place to rest." Then Sarah, You've changed too much. Since London, you're like a stranger. How could you treat family like enemies? More poured in. I sacrificed my life for you, and this is how you repay me? We're family. How can you be so heartless? I stared at the glowing screen, heart racing. Part of me wanted to smash the phone. Another felt an odd relief. For years, I'd bowed my head, stayed silent, tried to please everyone. But today, I'd hit send. I'd said no. Within 20 minutes, the doorbell rang frantically. I peeked through the peephole. In the hallway, Mom wore a thick coat, her face stern. Sarah stood beside her, clutching her belly, eyes glistening. Her fiancé, visibly annoyed, held a paper bag as if they were ready to move back in. The knocking turned to pounding. Mom shouted, "Emily, open the door! Stop this childish nonsense! You're embarrassing me in front of the family!" Sarah added weakly, I'm so tired. I'm dizzy. Just let me in to rest." I heard her slump, playing up the drama. A question echoed, "Do they think I'll cave again?" I walked to the kitchen, put the kettle on, and calmly made tea. The bubbling water drowned out the pounding. I added mint leaves, the aroma filling the room. I moved slowly, deliberately, as if no family was staging a tearful scene outside. Then I put on headphones, playing soft jazz. The music became a shield, blocking their shouts. I sat, took a deep breath, and sipped the hot tea. My heart still raced, my palms sweaty. I wasn't a superhero. I was scared, trembling, but I knew opening the door would pull me back to my old role, the obedient sister, the dutiful daughter, the one who always endures. I couldn't go back. Outside, Sarah moaned, "Mom, I can't take it anymore." Mom's voice rose. "Emily, are you going to let your sister faint in the hallway? What will the neighbors think?" I closed my eyes. Yes, the neighbors would think I'm heartless. But do they live my life? Do they endure being erased from their own home? No. The noise dragged on for nearly an hour. Finally, the footsteps faded, then stopped. I stayed still. Only when the clock struck midnight did I remove my headphones and set the tea down. The apartment was quiet again. I approached the door, checked the peephole. The hallway was empty, littered with scraps of paper under dim yellow light. I leaned against the door, exhaled, and gave a shaky laugh. A laugh mixed with tremors. It was the first time I stood firm against family pressure. I didn't open the door. I let them down. And I realized their disappointment was no longer my burden. I sat on the floor back against the wall, gazing out the window. Manhattan glowed like a labyrinth of light. I felt small, but for the first time I felt I had a real place in this world. I whispered, I said no, and that's just the beginning. If you want to hear more stories like mine and relate to my struggles, check out my previous videos on this channel. Some nights you lie awake, staring at the ceiling, realizing fear is no match for the cost of staying still. I had one of those nights. After daring to shut the door on their cries and accusations, I knew, if I stopped there, my family would find ways to creep back, to claim my space again. I needed a bigger step, a decision strong enough to show them this game was over. My mother's voice echoed, "You wouldn't know what to do with that money." She'd said it when I held Dad's inheritance check, $48,000, at his funeral 4 years ago. I remembered her look, pity mixed with disdain, as if I were a child with a toy too expensive. I'd stayed silent, tucked the check into an envelope, locked it in a safe, and never touched it. That night I opened the safe, pulled out the envelope. The paper had yellowed, but Dad's handwriting, Emily Carter, was still sharp, resolute. He trusted me. He gave me this chance, not to hide away, but to use when I truly needed it. And now, I knew I'd reached that point. The next morning I called an old friend, Alicia, a real estate agent. Her voice was groggy. "Emily? Wow, it's been forever. What's up?" I swallowed hard, speaking quickly. "Alicia, are there any apartments for sale in my building? I need to buy one now." She paused, then laughed. "Talk about timing. The unit downstairs just went on the market last week. It's pricey, but fair for Manhattan. Want to see it?" My heart raced. Downstairs, right below my apartment. I could keep my current place as a rental and move into a fresh space, untouched by betrayal, a parallel start, keeping control while opening a new chapter. My voice came out firm. Yes, today. The downstairs apartment wasn't huge, but it had 3 bedrooms, 2 entrances, and gleaming hardwood under midday light. As I stepped in, I smelled old dust, saw peeling paint, but strangely, I wasn't tired. I saw potential. This would be where I rebuilt myself, piece by piece, untouchable by others. The elderly couple selling it wanted to move closer to their son in the suburbs. They looked at me warmly, seeing me alone. "This place needs a young person to bring it new life," the woman said. I smiled, feeling less alone for the first time in weeks. I signed the deposit contract that day. My hand trembled as I wrote, not from fear but from emotion. I'd thought I lacked the courage for big decisions, but I just needed the spark. And it had arrived. The first thing I did with the new keys was hire a professional cleaning crew. They came with heavy-duty vacuums and chemicals, and in hours the apartment gleamed. Dust vanished, replaced by a fresh lemon scent. I stood in the empty living room, the hum of the vacuum like a song of beginnings. Next, I hired painters to coat the walls in creamy white, replaced the bedroom flooring, and ordered new furniture. Not lavish pieces, but ones that felt like me: a dark gray sofa, a walnut dining table, a sprawling bookshelf along one wall. As the furniture arrived, I felt weightless. I unpacked each box, arranged each piece like assembling fragments of my life. That evening, I lit a cinnamon candle, the kind I used to burn every Sunday. As the flame flickered, the room filled with a familiar scent. It was my rebirth ritual. Then I hung the painting Dad gave me when I got into college, a serene mountain landscape. He'd said, "Hang this where you feel safest. It'll remind you that you deserve a place of your own." Now it was in its rightful place, and so was I. While the new apartment took shape, I didn't neglect the old one. I cleared every trace of the baby shower, boxed up their gifts and supplies, and donated them to charity. I signed a contract with a short-term rental company to turn the old apartment into a space for traveling professionals. No more chaotic parties or takeovers. I recalled Mom's accusations. "You're so selfish. You've changed." She was right. I had changed, but this time for me, not them. On the day I signed the final papers for the new apartment, I wore a white shirt and simple jeans. No need for flair, because I wanted the moment etched in authenticity. The lawyer handed me a thick stack of documents pointing to the last line. "Just sign here, Emily." I took the pen, breathed deeply. My hand was steady, each stroke firm. Emily Carter. As the ink dried, my heart pounded, but I wasn't trembling. I smiled, a full smile for the first time in years. I whispered to myself, "Finally, I'm truly in charge of my life." What I never expected. When you start taking control, those used to dominating you react more fiercely than ever. I thought clearing the old apartment, signing the rental contract, and settling into the new one would make my family back off. I was wrong. It was just the start of a silent, ruthless battle. It began with whispers from relatives. An aunt called, hesitant. "Emily, your mom says you took the apartment, kicked Sarah out. Is that true?" I froze. Took the apartment? I was the one on the lease, paying every month. Yet somehow the story flipped. I became the traitor while they, the ones who erased me, played victims. Days later, a thick envelope arrived, no sender listed. Inside were fake, legal documents demanding I transfer the apartment to Mom, claiming she was the true owner. I laughed bitterly. The forged signature was clumsy, but it chilled me. They didn't just want the apartment, they wanted to erase my legal existence. That evening, I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and emailed my lawyer. I detailed everything: the fake papers, the rumors. Martin, my sharp-witted lawyer, replied concisely, "Emily, don't worry. You have all the evidence: lease agreements, payment receipts, the new apartment's deed. Instead of defending, strengthen your position. Start a property management company. Put the old apartment under its name, separate from your personal life. Any attack will fall into a void." I sat for hours, mulling his advice. A property management company, such a grand idea, far from the family's image of naive, easily led Emily. Then I realized, because they always saw me as weak. I needed to be stronger. I nodded to myself, replying, "Do it, Martin." Over the next 2 weeks, we finalized the paperwork. A small company was born, EC Properties. The old apartment was now under its management. The rental contract was redrawn, payments wired to the company's account. I held the thick folder, feeling like I gripped a steel shield. My family didn't stop. More fake letters arrived, endless calls, even visits to the building. Each time, the doorman sent me security footage. Mom in her pristine dress, Sarah clutching her belly, both pounding on the old apartment's door, shouting I'd stolen it. The images hurt, but also amused me. Hurt, because they were my blood. Amused, because they had nothing left but these pathetic tactics. But I knew I needed a final blow. An act to not only stop their schemes, but send a message. This is the last time. I opened my closet, pulling out something I'd kept from the cleanup. The guest book from the baby shower, the day I became an outsider in my own home. Its pink cover held scrawled notes. "Congrats, Sarah. Best mom ever." Not one mentioned me, the apartment's true owner. I took it to a bookbinder, asking them to rebind it in elegant black leather with silver text on the first page. A memento for the last time you erased me from my life. Holding the transformed book, my heart beat calmly. No more trembling, no more anger, just resolve. One afternoon, I asked the building's concierge to deliver the book to Mom when she showed up again. I didn't face her. I sat on my new apartment's sofa, watching the security feed on my phone. The footage showed Mom under the harsh sunlight, taking the book. She opened it, read the silver words. For a few seconds, her face shifted, from stern to trembling, from angry to defeated. She clutched the book to her chest, eyes wet. Sarah stood beside her, lips tight. No more shouting, no more pounding, just heavy silence. Then, for the first time in months, I saw Mom turn and walk away. Not in anger, but in defeat. Her steps were slow, shoulders slumped. I watched the screen, a new feeling rising. Not triumph, not pain, but relief. I was no longer afraid. I'd seen the person who once controlled my life bow and leave. That night, I sat by the window, the city aglow. The hum of traffic blended with life's rhythm. In my heart, a new note sounded. Peace. I thought of Dad, his check, his words. Find where you truly belong. I smiled, whispering, I found it, Dad. Placing the company folder beside me, I knew I'd crossed the threshold of fear. No one could touch me unless I allowed it. Some doors, once closed forever, unexpectedly creak open, as if asking, can we try again? I thought my bond with Mom and Sarah was severed for good. After the black leather guest book, after Mom's defeated look on the security feed, I believed the story was over. But one early winter afternoon, a soft knock came. I hesitated, then peered through the peephole. Sarah stood there, pale from sleeplessness, a faint smile on her lips. In her arms was a small bundle of blankets, and as I opened the door, I heard a baby's sharp cry. Emily, she said softly, voice trembling. Want to meet your niece? I stood speechless. Memories of Sarah's hallway tantrums, her schemes with Mom to take my apartment, burned in my mind. But her eyes now were different. No defiance, no demands, just exhaustion and hope. I took a deep breath and nodded. Come in. My apartment smelled of cinnamon and new wood. I put the kettle on, quietly preparing a simple dinner. A golden roasted chicken, crisp vegetable salad, and an apple pie Dad used to love. I thought of him as I rolled dough, his rough hands slicing apples, his warm smile saying, cinnamon and apples always make a house feel like home. Mom arrived later. Not with her usual stern face, but with tired eyes. Seeing Sarah's baby, she reached out trembling arms to hold her. I watched, my heart softening. Whatever had happened, she was this child's grandmother. We sat around my small wooden table. No arguments, no accusations, just the clink of cutlery, the baby's occasional coos, and awkward glances. I saw Sarah lower her eyes as I served her chicken. I saw Mom place a slice of pie on my plate, silent, her hand trembling. I didn't deny the painful memories, but that evening, in the warm glow of my apartment, I also didn't deny another truth. We were still family. flawed, wounded, but bound by ties not easily cut. The moment peaked when Mom held Sarah's baby close, her eyes softening, humming a lullaby. Sarah watched, lips trembling, while I looked on. I suddenly remembered being held in those arms, hearing that same tune. For a moment, resentment dissolved, leaving a simple truth. 3 generations of women were here, with a tiny life between us, innocent of the past. Sarah met my gaze. No apology, no explanation, just a tired, genuine smile. I nodded back. Maybe that was enough. As dinner ended, Mom set her fork down, sighing. Emily, I know I've done many things wrong. Her voice broke, eyes on the table. I don't expect you to forgive me now, but thank you for letting me be here tonight. I stayed silent. Scars remained. But I realized forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's daring to give a chance to start anew, however small. I stood, grabbed more pie, and placed it before Mom. She looked up, surprised. I smiled. Eat, Mom. It's still Dad's favorite. We finished dinner in comfortable silence. No climax, no drama, just warmth spreading. I looked around. Mom cradling her granddaughter, Sarah tired but calm. And me, no longer weighed down by heaviness. The small table, 3 generations, a fragile hope, not perfect, but real. As they left, I walked them to the door. Sarah turned, saying softly, "Thanks, Emily. It's been a long time since I felt a meal was truly family." I looked at her, then the sleeping baby, thinking, I may never forget what they did, but I can choose not to let it define my future. I closed the door, leaned against it, and smiled faintly. Tonight, I'd seen a new spark. A chance that, despite our brokenness, we could find pieces to reconnect. Maybe the greatest lesson wasn't about protecting my apartment or asserting control, but about courage and forgiveness. Courage to say no when disrespected, to defend my space and worth. Forgiveness to see that even in deep wounds, there's room for a small chance to begin again. Families aren't perfect. They can hurt us deeply, but in those cracks, if we're strong enough to set boundaries and open enough to forgive, we find true peace. I believe we all deserve a place called home, where we're respected and loved. If this story gave you some empathy or strength, leave a comment, share your thoughts, and subscribe to my channel for more human stories. I'll see you in the next journey.